My name is Edwin, born of Wessex, son of Aldric, a then sworn to King Edward the Confessor. I was 11 years of age when the first cracks in England's old crown began to show. I remember the look in my father's eyes that winter, when Edward died childless. It was a mixture of mourning and fear. Without an heir, the throne would not stay empty long, but who would wear the crown? The air in the royal hall in Westminster was thick that day, not with incense or smoke, but with ambition. I clung to my father's leg as the nobles whispered and weighed their loyalties. Among them stood Harold Godwinson, Earl of Wessex, a tall man with golden hair and sea-blue eyes. A warlord of proven strength, Harold was chosen by the Witenagemot, the Council of Nobles, as King of England. But not all saw Harold's coronation as rightful. Beyond the narrow sea in Normandy, the Duke, William, bastard son of Robert the Devil, burned with fury. He claimed Edward had promised him the throne. More than that, he claimed Harold had once sworn fealty to him, kneeling upon sacred relics after a shipwreck cast him into Norman hands. I did not know it then, but that oath, real or invented, would soon decide the fate of every soul in England. The year 1066 was not kind. Barely had Harold warmed the throne when word reached the court. Harold Hardrada, King of Norway, had landed in the north with a sea of warriors, allying with Harold's own brother, Tostig. The king marched north with terrifying speed. My father went with him. They fought at Stamford Bridge, and there the Norse were shattered. It is said that the river turned red, that Harold Hardrada died with a two-handed axe in hand, singing of Valhalla. But our cost was great. I never saw my father again. The day after the victory, as England celebrated, news reached us. William had landed in Sussex. While we bled in the north, the Normans had crossed the sea. I was now an orphan, taken into the care of a sympathetic bishop who sent me south to be raised in the monastery near Hastings. I watched as Harold marched his tired men across the country once again, rushing to face the second invasion. It was here that fate gripped me by the shoulders and turned my path. The Norman army struck swiftly. They burned homes, captured towns, and cut supply lines. One day, Norman knights raided near our monastery. I was caught in the chaos, huddled beneath a stone cross, shivering in fear. But one of the riders, a man named Roger of Evreux, a knight under Bishop Odo of Bayeux, found me. I spoke their tongue a little, thanks to my tutors. I do not know why he spared me, but he brought me before Bishop Odo, William's half-brother, who took me in as a page. I was now a servant in the heart of the Norman war camp. That is how I came to meet William of Normandy. He was unlike any man I had seen before. Broad-shouldered, rough-featured, but with a commanding voice that silenced the most arrogant barons. He spoke not as a tyrant, but as a man possessed by divine right. "God has given me this land," he once told his knights. Edward gave me his word. Harold swore an oath. I come not as invader, but as king. He trained daily, donned armor himself, and ate with the men. I polished his sword. I watched as he planned every step of the great battle to come. October 14th, 1066, the Battle of Hastings. We rose before the sun. The mist lay thick on the fields. The English had taken the high ground at Senlac Hill. They stood in tight formation. The great shield wall, a living wall of oak and iron with axes and spears bristling like a forest. I watched from a ridge as the Normans deployed. William's army was a mosaic of mercenaries, crossbowmen from Flanders, swordsmen from Brittany, cavalry from Normandy. The first volleys of arrows darkened the sky, but the Saxon wall held, arrows bounced from shields. The cavalry charged. The horses stumbled on the steep incline. Again the English held. For hours the two sides clashed. I saw William's horse slain beneath him. A cry went up, "The Duke is dead!" But William rose, helmet in hand, and rode before his men, shouting, "I live! Fight on!" Then came the turning point. William ordered a feigned retreat, pretending to flee. The English broke formation to pursue. That's when Norman knights wheeled around and cut them down. The wall broke. The battle turned into a slaughter. I saw Harold, our king, my people's king, standing at the crest of the hill. Then came the arrow. It struck his eye. He fell, and with him England. The king was dead. Crows circled. Fires burned the bodies of the fallen. I wept. I wept for Harold, for my father, for Wessex. But William did not celebrate. He stood blood-splattered and grim, gazing over the land he had claimed. "It is mine," he said, "and now I must make it hold." Weeks later, I stood in Westminster Abbey as he was crowned King of England. The Latin chants rose like incense, but I remember the hush. the fear in the crowd as Norman guards surrounded the church. A fire broke out outside, the people panicked. It was a coronation under the shadow of a sword. I remained at court. I became Odo's scribe and later William's steward. I saw things no child should see. Castles rising like claws from the land, stone keeps at Warwick, Lincoln, and Dover. The land stolen from English lords divided among Norman barons. The Domesday Book, a grand survey of every cow, coin, and crop in the land, England laid bare. The old tongue began to fade. Laws were rewritten in Latin, the common folk suffered, and yet something new began to stir. A blending of blood, a forging of two peoples. I learned Norman customs, they learned our land. William ruled with iron, but not madness. He brought order, however brutal. Now I write this in my old age, from a manor granted me by the king I once feared. My sons speak English and French. They know the sword and the book. They ask me what I remember of the battle. I tell them this. England died that day on the hill, but it did not stay dead. From fire and blood it rose again. And though the crown changed hands, the soul of the land endured. I was Edwin, son of Wessex, page to the bastard who became a king, witness to the day England was remade.